Today we're going to review reports for Ashurbanipal, both in a rally context and in the open field. Because man, I think he is looking really strong, although he can be countered. So stick around in this video for reports where we ran rallies and garrisons for a long time, doing many reinforcements to simulate what it'd be like in KVK, and for the open field battles to learn if you too should max Ashurbanipal. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And it's really not a secret that when a new commander arrives into the game for rallying or garrisoning, with the exception of like Suleiman, they're almost certainly going to be meta. And for, I don't know, 99 out of 100 times, maxing the new rally or garrison commander is probably the right choice for rallying and garrisoning. But how good is Ashurbanipal, and can he be beaten? To test this, we actually rallied a pass, and we reinforced that pass over and over. In addition, in my restart kingdom, they went and they did a bunch of open field testing with Ashurbanipal, so we're going to get a look at that as well. But before we do, let me just get a quick look at what Ashurbanipal is doing and why he would perform well, both in the field and also in a rally context. And by the way, I don't think you would put him in a garrison at all. So Ashurbanipal is going to be doing 1,500 damage factor to 5 targets and an extra 1,000 damage factor to a single target, the main thing you're hitting. So that's 2,500 damage factor, which is really good. But remember, in the open field, you're getting 20% attack, but 20% of your defense and 15% march speed is contingent on your being outside of your territory. This means if you're on defense, all he's giving you on this skill is 20% attack, which kind of sucks. From there, we look at the next skill, Conqueror of Elam, giving you 20% skill damage boost, which is nice. But the next part of this is only for rally and garrison. Whenever this troop uses an active skill while attacking a city or stronghold, I guess just for swarming or rallying, I should say, the target deals 20% less normal attack damage. This is like directly countering Gorgo, which sucks to suck. From here, the next skill, this commander's troop takes 15% less normal attack damage. When this commander is leading a rally attack, whenever their rallied army deals direct damage, they're going to start stacking up skill damage. They can get 30% skill damage dealt stacked. Okay, and then they've got this expertise skill that goes in and gives you a random boost every time an active skill is used. This is way better than people are giving it credit for, like way better. So your primary commander uses an active skill and you're going to get, let's say, 30% health. It's random here, which of these things you get. And then 2 seconds later, your secondary commander uses an active skill and then you've got 20% skill damage. Now, those buffs only last for 4 seconds and they're chosen at random, which is a bit of a bummer. But I feel like getting extra skill activations with Ashurbanipal is going to be the jam, which is why I've been saying that Hermann Prime would be a really good pair with him, because you get yet another activation here, which is really powerful when he does his free use of an active skill. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So let's start with the rally and garrison situation. What rallies are the best ones to run, and which garrisons are the best ones to counter Ashurbanipal? And I want to point out that although you could run a rally with Hermann Prime that is so damn swarmable, you are going to get just absolutely obliterated. I think that your best rally situation is actually going to be with Henry, okay? You pair Ashurbanipal with Henry, and that is almost certainly the way to go. Here he is. I mean, he's literally just designed to be rallying garrisons. That's the thing he does. Solid damage factor, good debuffs, good survivability, wrecks the swarmers. This is where you want to be. The other consideration for a rally would, of course, be Zhuge Liang. And, hey, look, you want to crank the damage? Yeah, Zhuge Liang will crank the damage. So you could do Ashurbanipal, pair with Zhuge Liang, and I think the two of them will also do well. You're much more vulnerable, in my opinion, to getting swarmed. This has to do with the fact that you're really not getting any normal attack boosts over here with Zhuge Liang, whereas with Henry you are. That's something we did in order to get a real sense of what these commanders might perform like in KVK, is that we actually used full armaments. We used full equipment. You used the best of what you could have right now. And we expect that players in our kingdom have pretty much about the best you can do. Now, that's not exactly true. Like, I would say, obviously, Yoda, in many cases, has slightly better armaments. So keep that in mind as we look through these results, that they do include equipment and armaments. I will flash those up on the screen as we review the result here for each of these different combinations. And keep in mind that each of these took like 10 to 15 minutes to run because you set the rally and then you fill the garrison. I think we were doing for like at least 7 minutes or so of filling the garrison and filling the rally, and then we see how it does. So this first report is against a Gorgo Constantine, right? Does the old meta die hard? And the answer is, yeah, like they get pretty wrecked here. 333,000 sevs to 464,000 sevs. However, I want to point out that I've got slightly better gear on my Gorgo Constantine and possibly more relevant armaments. So we're going to get a look at that as well a little bit later on to see, is the Gorgo Constantine really this shredded or not? And people gave me a shocking amount of hate when I was like, yeah, Gorgo Constantine's really good. And then reality is that like it's actually really, really, really good. This is probably your best infantry garrison if you can fill full infantry and sort of handle a rally coming your way, especially against a pass. Of course, we'll test Zeno in a minute as well. In fact, let's just go look at the other infantry results first. So like I said, I thought I could do maybe a little bit better with the armament combination I have and also the equipment combination that I've got. And here we are, 315 to 385. So this is definitely a closer result, but is obviously favoring Yoda. Granted, Yoda's armament situation is much better than my armament situation, even though the armaments I have are very good. But you can expect Gorgo Constantine is going to get a little bit worked by this new Ashurbanipal rally. And then from here, we tested Zeno. We did Zeno primary, Gorgo secondary. The reason is that you wanted to buff your all damage and then have Gorgo use her active skill. This is something we debated, however, and it is possible that Gorgo primary is a better choice. And the reason you would want that is for the 100 less rage requirement. That's 900 rage for the active skill on Gorgo. 455,000 to 399,000. So Ashurbanipal Henry is winning here, but honestly not by a ton. But remember that these pass rallies run for a very long time. So you just need to keep in mind the sort of scale of what's happening. This was a 7-minute situation, but this easily in a real situation could have been 70 minutes or 140 minutes. And so when you actually scale up how long a real pass rally might take, you kind of realize that like any sort of differential here is going to ultimately stack up in a pretty meaningful way. So there were, of course, a couple other things we tested at the pass, and I want to review these. One of them is a cavalry garrison. And the cavalry garrison actually wins against the Ashurbanipal rally. We tried a Zhuge Liang with Ashurbanipal, and that was 276 to 309. And in this case, we've got War Daddy Chad up to bat here with his equipment and his armaments. So I'll put those up on the screen. But the cool thing about Ashurbanipal is that it looks like he is bringing a lot more relevance to the cavalry garrison, which is unsurprising. It should work such that cavalry counters archers. Like, it makes sense. And in fact, we ran a report earlier with Ashurbanipal and Henry, because as I said, I think Henry is the better pick here. When I was streaming this, I didn't even realize that it's actually the Jan Zizka Hera that won. So it was 426 to 473. So Jan Zizka Hera wins this trade. And the cavalry garrison looks like it's going to be really relevant in these situations. Now, with that said, although Hera is good against getting swarmed, Jan Zizka is strangely bad at getting swarmed, whereas Gorgo is shockingly good at handling a swarm and wrecking the swarmers. This has to do with normal attack damage and how much, ultimately how much damage you're going to do with counters back to the enemy. So cavalry are looking like the answer here if you're worried about a rally situation against Ashurbanipal. And we also tested out an archer garrison. Dido with Zhuge Liang here. And it lost, but it's very close. 313 for the Ash Henry, and then 358 for the Dido Zhuge Liang. So all in all, I think Ashurbanipal is looking really good, but I don't think he's totally busted. And I think that at the end of the day, if we're talking about a flag or we're talking about even potentially a fort, swarming is going to really skew the results here. And, you know, we canceled these rallies when both the rally and the garrison are still full. Obviously, these reports get a lot more one-sided one way or another if the garrison starts to die out or if the rally starts to die out in its let to continue run. I will also point out that in KVK, there are other things that will really skew the results, like people are going to swarm the rally. People, as I was mentioning, are going to swarm the garrison. There's going to be counter rallies that are set. Those are going to get swarmed. So we didn't really do any of that here, but we really just wanted to give kind of a baseline sense of, hey, if this runs for a while, what's it going to look like, so that you can make a smart choice about what you would use. I do think that the infantry are the worst of all these options, but I mean, this is a pretty rough trade, actually. Like, you scale this up and it gets pretty bad. Now, if this was a multi-rally situation, would the Gorgo be the better pick? Maybe, and I also don't know that Constantine will be the best pick here for a multi-rally, but this is a rally situation, one rally versus one garrison. Let's go get a look at the open field results for a minute and talk about those. All right, so these next reports are from Ark of Osiris practice match testing, where they duel till 1 March sad faces. And this is done without equipment, without armaments, which makes it nice and easy to compare, although obviously equipment and armaments can change the way that these commanders ultimately perform. So first up, we're going to look at Ashurbanipal with Hermann Prime. Maxed out Hermann Prime, battling against Skippy Liuche. We're looking at 34,000 to about 26,000. Ash with Hermann works really, really well. And I have been saying for a long time that I think this is probably the best archer combo you can run if you're running 2 archer marches. So you would run Boudica Zhuge Liang, Ash with Hermann Prime. People are trying to give me a hard time saying that, oh, well, I mean, Zhuge and Hermann do so much damage, it's really crazy. Look, I'm going to do some more testing with this, but here's the thing. Every commander that is giving you extra uses of the sort of expertise on Ashurbanipal is a pretty big deal. Let me just explain this Ashurbanipal expertise in a way that maybe is a little bit easier to understand. So remember, when you use an active skill for 4 seconds, you're going to get a random buff. For the sake of simplicity, let's say that that random buff is 30% of stats. Now, if you have a 8-second rage cycle, that means your primary commander is going to use their active skill, okay? You're going to get a buff for 4 seconds. For 4 seconds, you're not going to have that buff anymore. And so basically for half your rage cycle, you have a 30% buff. Okay, so that averages out to 15% of stats. Except, remember, your secondary commander also uses an active skill. So you add the two together, now we're talking about an average of 30% of stats. That's a 30% buff, a total of 8 seconds of that buff. And technically, it's 4 seconds and 4 seconds, and like 2 of those seconds overlap. And you hope you don't get the same buff over again, right? But with Hermann Prime, with all the poison stacks you're doing, okay, especially when you're doing big open field fights, you're going to get extra activations of that active skill. And every time that happens, I mean, that's a nice little boost to your stats. I think this is a really great combo. Obviously, if you're running 1 March, you're going to be looking at Hermann Prime and Zhuge Liang as the OP pair. That's what I'm going to run on my restart with my 1 infantry march. Anyways, let's go to the next pair here. Actually, we ran this 3 times. Dude, I'm so glad they did this way. Thank you, Mori and Prof Rock, for this testing. 34,000 to 26,000. So still a commanding report for Ashurbanipal with Hermann, which is meaningful, by the way, because the Skippy Liuche combo, bro, that is like the best that infantry can do. And it is crazy good in the field. Now, it's worth mentioning that both players in this instance are using the Ottoman civilization. So Prof Rock is benefiting from having the special unit, which does have more base stats. He also has 5% extra health, and technically the 5% skill damage benefits both sides, but obviously Liuche does just not benefit as much from that, okay? Next report, you're looking at 32.5 versus about 25k as the result. So we can see very consistently that Ash with Hermann Prime is beating Skippy Liucha. And not by a little, but by like a pretty solid, consistent amount here. Now, take away some of those advantages of the special unit and the extra health, and like, this becomes a much closer to an even outcome. From here, we look at the Nevsky Joan, and you'd kind of expect Cavalry to win, 22.5 to almost 28,000. Nevsky Joan is beating Ash with Hermann. From there, 29 to 27.5. So Ash with Hermann actually beats the Nevsky Joan, which is pretty meaningful. And then, boom, Nevsky Joan comes back and wins the third, 24 to 27.5. So all in all, I would say that it's handling really well against Cavalry. But remember, if Mori had a Cavalry civilization, it could be a slightly different story here. Granted, nobody really fights with a Cavalry civilization unless you're rallying with Arabia. From here, archers. Now we're looking at the exact same special unit for both sides, and Boudica Zhuge Liang beats Ash with Hermann. Why would that be the case? I mean, Boudica single target damage is super relevant. Also, Boudica does a little bit of healing here, which is super relevant. 24,000 to 28,000. Wow. From there, 22,000 to 28,000. I'm rounding, but like close enough here. Boudica with Zhuge Liang is actually soundly defeating Ashurbanipal with Hermann, which is a little bit surprising. I mean, Ashurbanipal does 2,500 damage factor to the single target, but at the end of the day, I feel like Hermann Prime only really kicks into high gear if you're like hitting lots of things with your poison. Otherwise, his expertise is doing very little for you, which means like all these duel reports really underrepresent how much Hermann Prime is going to do here. And then next, 22,700, so almost 23,000 to 28.5. So Boudica Zhuge Liang is still doing great. So for those of you who are afraid that your Boudica is irrelevant, that's BS. She's still great. Boudica with Zhuge Liang is obviously a great pairing. I still would say that Zhuge Liang with Hermann, although, is your like kind of number one pairing. But I think if you're running two pairings, running them like this is a really good way to go. There's more to that nuance, but we could talk about that in a separate pairing video. And I want to do more testing before I'm really locked into this configuration. From here, Skippy Liucha and Ash with Zhuge Liang, 29,000 to 26,000. So we switch up who's in the combo. We bring in Zhuge Liang instead of Hermann Prime, and we don't win by as much against the Skippy Liucha. We do it again. 28,000 to 27,000. It's a very narrow victory. And again, when you start to think about, hey, the civilization bonuses here are making the difference, it's like, yes, they are. Nevsky Joan versus Ash Zhuge Liang. You're looking at about 27 to 25. So a close battle, but favors the Ash Zhuge. And then here, Ash Zhuge Liang loses. So like very similar result to the Hermann Prime, actually. 24,000 to about 26.5. Actually, this is like a very similar result to the Hermann Prime. Then we bring in Henry with Ash. And we get a solid win here against Skippy Liucha. You're looking at 39,000 to 30.5. I mean, Henry will do well in a 1v1 for sure. Okay. And those are all the reports we have for now. But I want to do a lot more open field testing. And in particular, I really want to do some 5551 Hermann Prime testing, which I think I will do tomorrow in a live stream. So if you don't want to miss that, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, I'm going to be making a video later this week giving my recommended pairings for archers and the implications for what the best pairings are in the open field. If you want, I mean, gosh, do I give you just a little teaser? I don't know. Maybe I'll hold on to it. I have some really fun ideas that I've been chatting about with Cortex for Warriors Unbound. Bro, you can do some things. You can do some things with Ash and Warriors Unbound, switching around troop types. But I'm hyped for that, man. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, subscribe to the channel. TLDR, Ash is good. He's good in the field, and he's going to be a good rally, but he's not insane. He's just good. And I think that's also a positive thing when the new commander is not completely busted. Although F's in the chat for infantry, he does seem to be pretty hard countering. Hard countering? I don't know. He's countering what Gorgo does. So GG there. Throw a like on the vid, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see the full testing as it happened, I was live streaming, even though I was traveling. Card in the end screen in just a second. I hope you'll check it out.